Okay, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about how to bind the receiver so that we can continue building the power pod for the Flite Test FT Flyer. Before I talk about binding the receiver, you got to bind it to a radio. I'm going to talk just a minute about radios. For an airplane like this, nice light foam board-based airplane, you can use a simple radio like this, Spektrum DX4. I've had one of these for a long time, and they work very well. They no longer sell them. They're kind of obsolete, but they for what they used to sell this for $60, they now sell this for $60, which is a new Spektrum DXE, and there's a complete separate, in my other series of videos, review of how this works and how you program it with your iPhone or an Android phone. So it's a really good radio for $59. Would be perfect for anybody just starting out. It's what I would call a good entry-level radio. So either of these will work. The DXE has some advantages in that it has a wireless trainer. So if you have two of these, you can connect them wirelessly as a buddy box. And it has digital trims, where this has analog trims, and the sticks and gimbals are better, and you've got lots more switches and things than these old ones do that sold for about the same price. So we're not going to use the DX4, although I would recommend, if you don't have a radio, this is a good way to start for $60, the DXE radio. If you really want to get into the hobby and get a really, really good radio for $200, the DX6, not the 6i, but the DX6 is an extremely good radio. I've had mine for quite a while. So I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use the DX7. The DX7 is obsolete. I've owned this one for a while. They sell the DX8 for the same price they sold the DX7 now. And so I'm going to use the DX7 for binding here, and not the DX6. So I'll just set that one aside. The 6 and 7 are quite similar. The 8 is actually quite similar. It has a few more features than the 7. I'll review the 8 at some point. But I'm going to use the DX7. As far as the receiver is concerned, I am going to use the Power Up RD410 receiver. I want to just for a minute compare. If I didn't use this receiver, I would use the Spektrum AR400. Okay, the Spektrum AR400. They're quite similar. Both are what they call full range. It's about a half a mile. Beyond that, I wouldn't trust anything, even because number one, at a half a mile range, you're not going to see the airplane. The difference between these two is one, this has two small antennas. This has a small and a very large long antenna. Probably gets a little bit better reception. And the other big difference is this is $8. I think. Let me make sure. Yes, $7.95 for the AR410. This is $29, but you get a little bit more for it. I use these all the time because I want telemetry. My radio has telemetry in it. I want the receiver to have telemetry capabilities, and so the AR400 can accept the telemetry module, the TM1000 module, and so I use AR400s when I want a telemetry, and then when I get to it at some point, I'm going to build one of these airplanes with the telemetry module in it, and I'm sure it'll work just fine. So as far as the binding procedure, I want to explain something about the fail-safe. When you bind an AR400, it automatically has fail-safe. when you go to bind this power up, you have to do something extra special in that when you go to bind it, you put the bind plug in, and if you want fail-safe, you remove the bind plug. Don't know why they do that. It should always have fail-safe as far as I'm concerned. On. Now, fail-safe on this and this mean different things, okay? Without fail-safe on, the only thing that happens is it automatically pulls the throttle back to 0, okay? If you have the throttle at 0 when you bind it, which you should normally do. And that's all it does when you don't use fail-safe. When you do use fail-safe, what's described on the website isn't exactly right as I have discovered. I've done some extensive testing yesterday, and so when you do bind it with fail-safe, what happens is the rudder turns hard left, the elevator turns hard down, so it would enter a spiral and crash into the ground with idle power. Okay, with this airplane, when you pull the power back idle, it's going to come down pretty quick. You don't need all the rest of it. But I always like to bind it in the fail-safe, and I'll follow the fail-safe procedure to bind this one. Okay. So I've got a battery, I've got the receiver, I've got the ESC that we're going to use, and I've got the radio. Now I'll describe in detail the programming of this radio in a separate video, and it's already programmed for on a new. This is my FT Flyer number 3 is what it says. So it's ready to be bound. So what we're going to do is, to bind it, we're going to put the bind plug into the battery bind channel. Okay. And we're going to put the throttle in the throttle channel. We're going to put the JR connector from the ESC into the throttle channel. Okay. And now we're going to use this to power the receiver, the battery. Battery's not fully charged, but it doesn't really matter. When I plug it in, you're going to see this thing start flashing. I'm going to pull that bind out so it goes into the fail-safe bind. I don't want to walk off camera here. You got to be at least 3-4 feet away from the transmitter to the receiver for it to bind properly. You can't do it all on camera. So I'll walk off. You'll hear my radio talk in the background if you listen carefully, that it is binding and the bind is complete kind of thing. So here we go. I'm going to plug this in. Okay, get the things lined up. Okay, you can see it flashing. Okay, I'm going to pull the bind plug out, leave it flashing, and you can watch when it goes steady. Okay, you heard it say bind complete at the same time that went steady, or about the same time that went steady, and I hope you could hear that. So now that we're set, I always like to unplug this next. Unplug the receiver, turn off the radio, and we're set to go. I'm going to put this away. I always like to make sure I don't have the bind plug in there for the next time I turn it on. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, in the next video, that's the bind. In the next video, I'm going to test all the electronics and make sure everything is working with the motor and all the electronics are going to be working. So we'll do that in the next video. So thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next video.